advice do you have to homeowners?
Practicing that preparedness, starting the conversation now is always going to be a benefit to any association out there.
And welcome to Recovery Report Live. I'm Dan Odess, president of GlobalPro, where we manage risk to recovery, and we have an awesome show today. I'm on the road because GlobalPro is expanding. I'm meeting with our new team, and I just can't wait to share all the exciting news that come up. But before we get there, we're going to talk lots more about how we have managed more than $1 billion in recovery, how we've represented thousands of associations over the past 10 years, and as those have continued to tune in, or those that are tuning in today to hear this first, we are counting down to 10 years of being in business. I am super excited to have on our guest today to talk about a very, very important issue. But before we get there, let's talk about Tropical Storm Fred, obviously threatening the coastline of Florida. And also, the projections are pushing it out into the Gulf. And if history has showed us anything, we have no idea what to expect when it gets out into the Gulf. So keep your eyes on this. Make sure that you're monitoring this situation. We will obviously be in the Florida Keys as well as in South Florida, because some of the projections have it kind of going through there, right? We're right in that cone. The cone is that error, right? You have that big error from left to right. You don't know really where it's going to go. So practice preparedness. If you need any information about practicing that preparedness and making sure that you have all your things ready for your community association, your business, make sure you check out our website, hit the resource section, and there's all kinds of checklists and other information that is there to help and guide you to make sure that your association and business are ready. But today's show is about protecting your building, is about proper maintenance and care. It's about possible loss and damage due to the failure of systems in your building that are intended to protect the infrastructure, the concrete, right? Different types of actual waterproofing. We're going to have our guests on here in a second to talk about the different components, things you should be looking at. But I want to talk a little bit about things that GlobalPro has done to help various different community associations in dealing with these exact issues. We have helped associations recover tens of millions of dollars due to failures in their waterproofing or other types of materials that are intended to shed water or keep the water from getting and infiltrating the concrete and causing damage. A couple things that come, a couple claims that we have handled that come to mind. We had several losses in the Williams Island area where we had these elevated pool decks, which had planters and the pools themselves, where the waterproofing and the membranes and the finish in the pool started to fail. What seemed to be hundreds of thousands of dollars in actual small little repairs that they want to do in here. When we got on site and we noticed that where the concrete had fallen, we did further investigation with a team of engineers and experts. We noticed that this was an invasive issue, and it had resulted in one instance in a $7.8 million recovery, and another instance over $2.5 million recovery. So make sure you understand that what you may see right in front of you may not be the full extent of it. There may be unforeseen conditions and issues that are deep within that concrete and the infrastructure that are just festering that need to be addressed as well. So again, as you're looking at these things and obtaining these extra opinions and looking at this stuff, consider insurance and recovery as an avenue to helping your association rebuild from this loss and damage. A lot of people don't think that it's covered. They think, oh, it's wear and tear, it's long term, it happened over time. But once that concrete falls, it separates from the structure and causes damage to personal property or potentially even humans, or animals. We had one instance where someone was walking their dog and concrete came off a balcony and hit them, right? These things can happen. So monitor the situation. As soon as they do, let us know. We'll get out there. We'll take a look at the situation. Another instance that comes up down in Dadeland, we had another South Florida claim situation where the pool deck, the planters became an issue. Water infiltrated a massive concrete beam, which then led to cracking and separation of the concrete. It led to a multi-million-dollar recovery. The insurance company actually came out initially and denied the claim. We overturned that denial and obtained a recovery. So important. Consider this. Understand your coverages, what you're entitled to. These things are complicated. These things take a lot of expertise. You need to make sure that everything from your engineering report to your expert reports to the way in which the claims are reported. Your brokers and agents are not claims experts. They're there to sell you insurance. This is a very complex claim situation, something that takes time, a lot of energy. You need to understand case law. You need to understand policy themselves. We need to review these things. We need to look at the language that's afforded to you in your policy. What are you paying for? How can you get coverage for those things? And the last one that comes up is another one in Brickell Key. We had a community association that had a massive planters. And if you've ever been on Brickell Key, which is in the South Florida region, pretty much the entire island is an elevated like parking garage deck. It seems like you drive up onto the island and then there's a lot of parking and everything else. So pretty much all those planters and things you see are typically, most often, elevated above some sort of parking or conditioned space that's used by some community association on that island. In this particular instance, it resulted in millions of dollars of damages again. But once again, GlobalPro was on site looking into these things, working with the association. They did call us first, so we were out there before the claim got reported. We didn't deal with the denial or an underpayment, and we worked right alongside with the insurance company to make sure that they obtain the recovery they're entitled to. So I want to bring on our next guest to get a little bit deeper into this, to talk about the components, to talk about all the things that you need to know as a community association to help you through this process so you can better plan for these things. That's what we've been talking about in the various different segments we had on. Hey, Ron, thanks for joining us from Pecora Corporation. This is an awesome group. I'm very excited to have us on. We're not talking just about just another contractor, right? We're talking about a supplier of materials that really understand this. And I know Ron has a wealth of knowledge information you want to share with us. So again, Ron, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today.
Hey, Daniel, thanks for having me on. Appreciate the opportunity.
So, Ron, I want to talk about your Pecora first. I want to introduce the company to our guests. Maybe they don't know about it, but this company has been around for a long time. I mean, we're celebrating 10 years. We're counting down to it, but 1862. So, talk to us a little bit about Pecora Corporation. What is it? What do you guys manufacture? What are you supplying? Talk to us a little bit about how you got involved.
Yeah, Pecora, of course, been around, like you said, 1862. I think the first year of the Civil War. Companies changed a lot, obviously, over over the years. But we are a manufacturer of silicone products, urethanes, and hybrid coatings. We make sealants, we make deck coatings, we make wall coatings, and so forth. But all catering to the waterproofing industry.
So you've seen quite a bit, and so what is your role within Pecora Corporation, and how would you be interfacing with clientele?
What I'm a regional manager for Pecora. I cover the southeast of the United States and have local representation in various markets. But we work with contractors, we work with design professionals on providing waterproofing solutions for their projects.
Very cool. So the title of today's topic, right, is Recovering, Repairing, and Protecting Damaged Elevated Pool Decks. A very important topic, obviously, in the wake of the tragedy, Champlain South Tower, and it was just a constantly evolving situation. It seems like they should have probably figured this out by now and cleared the site and secured and everything else. But it continues to be a threat, actually, to the neighboring building, a new property, new construction, which, from what I've been told, there's actually several lawsuits being filed against them, alluding to whatever else. But I want to talk more about how you can help our clients, how you can help our viewers in planning and preparing for any sort of situation where they may have had failures. What do they need to look for? What do they need to do? So as it relates to high-rise buildings, all right, and specifically relating to pool decks and planters and really anything above ground, right, we need to secure those things. We need to protect the infrastructure from whatever it is or that's put on it or in it. So what are the components? We talk about waterproofing, but waterproofing, as a general contractor, as I am, is a pretty broad topic, right? So what are the different components of protections for large infrastructure like a community association building?
Specifically, waterproofing in what you're discussing is related to a coating, something that is film forming across a concrete surface, typically. And you want to be able to protect the concrete and the rebar to keep the rebar from spalling inside the concrete and creating the failed concrete.
So how does a coating like that fail?
Well, what happens, they all have life cycles, and if the coating isn't maintained or if it is not installed properly, then you can have compromise to that film surface that'll allow water to intrude into the concrete.
And we talked about earlier, I was actually just out at a very large complex of building, and there was a elevated planter. And one of the things that I made note of, and I just randomly asked the building engineer, I noticed that the trees, the actual trees that they put in it, were significantly larger. And right before we came on to the segment, we started talking about a little bit about it. And I just want to just take this as an opportunity and mention it, obviously, for our viewers, that over time, as these buildings age, right, we do things to improve and change the different areas. And this organization did not refer back to the original intent or design of those planters and started planting very large trees in them. And you mentioned, just the failures of them in installation, but the installation may not be the actual waterproofing itself. It could be what you're putting on top of it. So are there any other instances that you have seen stuff like this? And are there things that the associations should consider when they're planning these improvement projects?
Yeah, I mean, planters specifically, like we were talking earlier, I mean, if you don't put the plantings back that was originally designed or intended, you need to make sure you have the waterproofing that's going to support whatever you're putting in there. If you're putting in large trees, you're going to have a large, root system and all that can compromise waterproofing. There's a whole process to that, a protection course, everything you want to have on there to protect that. And also the weight is a consideration, like we discussed. I mean, decks are designed for a very specific weight per square foot. You want to make sure you don't exceed that.
Yeah, no, we're seeing all kinds of things. Obviously, as these building age, we want to improve them. We want to keep up with the building next door that's a little bit newer. We want to do something to add a little flair to it. And we're talking about a lot of materials and things that you can't see, right? It's not just so obvious. You need to dig down to look for these things. Like you talk about root systems, right? Again, something just not so obvious. You can't see it. A lot of times we're only checking the waterproofing after it fails, right? So it's not something that we're digging a hole to say, hey, how's my waterproofing doing? And what are we going to do about it if I find, and what am I actually even looking for? But how has the industry evolved? What are the types of materials that we're looking at today as opposed to like 10, 20 years ago? Because right now there's a lot of focus on the 40-plus-year-old buildings. So what has changed with the materials that they used then as opposed to the building materials that they're using today as it relates to waterproofing?
Yeah, waterproofing is always evolving, always coming up with better solutions, longer lasting solutions. 40 years ago, it may have been nothing, or it may have been a clear sealer that only penetrates the first eighth of an inch or so of concrete. Now you're going to look for something that's film forming, something that's going to span across the concrete, create a barrier to protect it from the elements.
So totally different materials. I mean, you're talking about something clear, like 450, things like that. So, I mean, I being a general contractor, doing a lot of high-rise construction and commercial construction work, whether it's a parking garage situation or high-rise buildings. I mean, I've seen many, many different types of products being used, and also have gone through like the warranty process. Particularly for your company, what is that warranty process like during the construction, or if you're applying new material? What should associations be looking for their professionals to be doing to make sure that they're in compliance with that warranty?
Well, for us, we want to be able to inspect the project as it progresses. When somebody uses our products, we have local representatives work for Pecora that will come out and do inspections. We do testing on our own. We do that in concert with the design professional and with the contractor to make sure everything's going the way it's planned. And then after the job, you want to have a maintenance program where you can maintain those waterproof systems. Yeah,
so it's really important. We actually we had an engineer on just a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about those inspections, and I had one instance where we found that the association did not retain the outcome of those inspection reports. So I know that there's certain documents and paperwork that gets issued a lot of times directly to the general contractor or the subcontractor or even the engineer, but making sure that the associations retains that documentation as well for its own records in the event that something happens, because maybe that contractor's not in business anymore, or maybe you can't get a hold of that engineer. It's really important, because if you can't remember what material you used, you obviously can't remember. You're obviously not going to have a little hard time making a warranty claim or looking into investigating whether or not it's even a warranty issue at that point. It may not even be the material, and that is your proof that it was done in compliance and that maybe there is an issue that needs to be addressed. Maybe it's a warranty issue. Who knows what it is, but the real important thing is retention of that documentation, looking into those things. But let's talk about that a little bit of the inspection. What should an association, now that we have an aging building, 20 plus years old, let's say it's 40 years old, they hire an expert to come out and take a look at this waterproofing. What should they key in on in those engineering reports to know that they need to replace their waterproofing?
I mean, the engineer, I'm sure, is going to go through, inspect the whatever the substrate is they're looking at. They're going to kind of give you an idea of the general overall condition of the waterproofing. They may implore the manufacturer, us or another manufacturer, to come out, give an opinion on where we think the life of the coating is. And then, look for those telltale signs, right? I mean, compromises in it. If there's something on those decks that are oftentimes those planters on top of the decks, everybody fertilizes and all that, and those chemicals will leach out and erode the coating. So they kind of have a whole process they'll go through in that report, I would expect.
Yeah, we had one instance where we actually had a pool pump room. It wasn't even the pool deck, right? And a lot of people don't think. I mean, there's a lot of times in these pool pump rooms, there's a waterproofing coating, a sealant that was applied to the concrete to protect it, and there's curbs. It's almost like a small retention pool, if you will, if something were to fail in the pool pump room. And in this particular association, while their pool deck looked fantastic, the pool pump room itself was an absolute disaster. And on the fourth floor was the pool deck. On the third floor was a pool pump room. And the pool pump room, actually the concrete started to fail in and around it, and the actual slab started to deflect and displace. So our claim, and the claim that we managed for that association, was for the third floor deck, not the fourth floor, because again, a lot of times associations are more concerned about what they can see on a daily basis, what's out there, what's sexy, right? We want the new pool furniture, but we're not so much interested in the pool pump room, which is on the third floor in some dark enclosed room that no one ever goes into but your building engineer or the pool maintenance company, right? But what was happening, they actually lost use of huge areas of their parking garage because of it. So it's a great point, Ron. Go beyond just the upper decks, look into your building. There may be other places where this material is installed, and making sure that it's in good condition, that it's functioning properly, and look below, look next to it, look around to make sure that it's all there. And when you're reviewing your engineering reports, make sure your engineers or your experts also did that, and engage companies like Pecora. I assume that you guys don't mind getting that phone call early on to take a look at it and assist these associations. Is that something you guys do quite often?
We do, yeah, and we do get those calls early on. Like to look at it up front; it's always best. Anything we can do to provide assistance for the association and the design professional. One thing I say about the pool pump room is I don't think people put enough value in that. That's a very caustic environment, and it's very deleterious to the concrete surfaces. It really, really is a harsh environment.
Yeah, no, it's like sometimes you go in those rooms and you can barely breathe on them, and it's just like, because you just got so much. You have the humidity, you have the chemicals, the gas, whatever else, and while they're ventilated per code and they have all the proper louvers and everything else, it's just an untenable situation, particularly when we have high humidity and temperatures, and it just South Florida is a tough environment. It's tropical. We talk a lot about that. The life cycle of these materials, while they may be designed in a lab to fit a specific use.
70 degrees and 50% humidity, right? Which we never have.
Exactly, and the environment's changing, right? It's evolving, and things are happening, and it's whether the winds are shifting one direction or not, what depends on whether or not the air is going to be flowing or circulating. So all these things are great to consider. Well, on that note, how can our viewers contact your company, find out more about all the great things that Pecora is doing?
For us, just go to Pecora.com. We're on all the social media platforms as well. But if you go to Pecora.com, they can click on our regional area there, and you can find a local representative. We'd be glad to help you.
Well, Ron, it's awesome to have on experts like you. We've gotten to know your team a bit, whether it's through Community Association Institute. We know you guys are very active in the community right now, trying to provide guidance and information, looking into these things actively. It's obviously top of mind for a lot of these community associations right now. How can they better protect their infrastructure in the wake of the tragedy of Champlain South Tower? We really thank you for taking the time to come on today. We thank your team for engaging us and being a part of this. And I have been learning a lot indirectly and now directly from your company and your team, and we look forward to seeing you out there and helping. So again, Ron, it's awesome to have you on. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Daniel. Great to be on and talk to you.
Well, guys, that's awesome. We had on an industry expert that talked about an important issue. I know that's top of mind for so many community associations, particularly in the wake of Champlain South Tower and the tragedy there, but also with all this condemnation that's coming up and the red tagging and what's going on in South Florida, right? But it's not an issue that is just specific to South Florida. We see it in the Northeast regions. We're seeing it out west, whether it's in Texas and California. These issues are more broad in general and do apply to infrastructure, whether it's in islands or throughout the United States. So whether you're tuning in and you're located in South Florida or in the Northeast or Midwest, these are important issues that I know impact you. I have done construction in the Northeast. I've done it in the Washington, D.C. greater area. I also did construction in the Panhandle of Florida as well as South Florida. I have seen various different conditions, and I can tell you, this stuff does not get enough attention early enough on, and it's awesome to have industry experts on from Pecora to talk about these things and other engineers that we've had on prior episodes. So if you missed any of those episodes, hit our YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe, check out our social media. Obviously on our website, we have all this information. And remember, practice preparedness. Tropical Storm Fred is out there. It's threatening the Gulf Coast as well as the East Coast of Florida, as well as the islands. A lot of stuff is going to evolve and change over the next few days. So make sure you're keying in on it and make sure you're practicing preparedness. And if there's anything that we can do, hit us up. Make sure you call us 855-487-7475 or shoot us an email, support@getglobalpro.com. We are one click away, one email, DM, whatever it takes. Let us know how we can help you. And we'll see you next week here at 11 o'clock on the Recovery Report Live with more guests to talk about more important issues that are impacting us in our markets. So continue to tune in. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. And again, thanks to Ron and all of our viewers for tuning in this week on the Recovery Report Live.